Councillor Bolwell. I'm supported on my right by Philip Crowther, Senior Lawyer, Regulatory. The meeting is being live streamed and will be available to view on the Council website after the meeting. By attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. Can I remind everyone that when you are speaking, please speak directly into the microphones so that you can clearly be heard and seen. Members, can you please state your name and ward, and officer, if you can please state your name and role. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited. All attendees must comply with the ruling of the chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and those using Teams, please ensure microphones are on mute and your device volume is set to 0 to maintain audio quality. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. No material is to be circulated to members of the committee. We have one application to determine today, and the case officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak to address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant, town, parish council and ward members, and each has 3 minutes. This morning we have public support speaker and the applicant. Following public speaking, the planning officers will have the opportunity to address any salient points they wish to clarify, and committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officers before moving into debate. When we go into councillor questions and debate, for the benefit of the public watching, can I ask again that members state their name and ward when addressing the meeting. We hope to be joined online today by Councillor Belinda Borden. We're supported by Megan Rochester and Anthony Nash in Democratic Services today, and the Senior Planning Officer for this application is Diana. Do we have any apologies, Democratic Services?
Good morning, Chair. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor David Took.
Thank you very much. And are we able, members, to agree the minutes for the 18th of November? Those in favour, if you can show me with your hands. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Those are approved. I'll sign them at the end of the meeting. Do we have any declarations of interest? That's no declarations of interest. Thank you very much. Diana, can I ask you to introduce yourself and your team that will be supporting you today?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. My name is Diana Mezugorikar. I'm Senior Planning Officer and Case Officer for this application. I'm supported by Kim Cowell, my Development Management Manager, and Steve Savage, who is available online if necessary.
Thank you very much, Diana. Just to be clear, Steve is Transport Development Liaison Manager and will be supporting with highways should there be a question regarding that. Can I ask the agent and the member of public, you have an opportunity to make your representation before the officer report or after? What would you choose, Claire?
Please.
After, please.
Thank you. So both representations will be made after the report. So if I can now move to the report for P full 2022/02819 Land at Post Farm, Litchett Minster, Dorset. Diana.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. The application is for a battery storage system together with associated infrastructure. This application has previously been referred to the January Strategic Committee by a previous officer. At the time, the fire service and environmental health officer have not been consulted, hence this application has been deferred to allow the applicant time to address these issues. There is only a short update. There is an error in paragraph 1667, page 36 of the officer report, that row 6, the condition 17 should read condition 18. This slide shows the location of the application site within the wider committee area between Upton and Litchett Minster. Oh, sorry, technical issue. Can just have a moment. This slide shows the application site in relation to the settlement boundaries of Upton and Litchett Minster. This slide shows the application site is located outside the defined settlement boundaries, but it's adjacent to A35 highways and up to settlement boundary beyond the highways to the north. It is also shown, application site is in relation to the wider area showing the heathland in the proximity where there is a green hatch. This slide shows the application is located within the designated Greenbelt area, also shown here in the green hatch. This slide shows the extent of the application site. The site covers an area of approximately 2.2 hectares in total, including the battery storage facility compound, which is approximately half a hectare, grid connection cable, which is approximately 1.2 kilometers long, and an area provided for biodiversity, net gain enhancement, which totals about 1.7 hectare, including the cable route. The topographical survey indicates that site slightly falls down towards south-southeast. This is the aerial view of the site showing the surrounding context. The site is located within approximately 1.1 kilometre of National Grid Litchett substation to the northeast and is adjacent to A35 dual carriageway to the north. There are several public right-of-ways within the wider context of the site, but the nearest public right-of-way is SE 183, which passes to the east of the site, connecting the A35 with the A350. However, the site visit suggests that this is closed and it is not possible to cross the A35 any longer. A further long-distance recreational routes include the Poole Harbour Trail long routes, which are located much further to the south of the site and outside of this map. Application site. As said previously, the site comprises of pastoral field, which is bound to the south by the short stretch of A35 dual carriageway. To the southwest and south, the immediate side boundaries are bound by native hedgerows with trees and an access track beyond that. The side boundary is not enclosed to the north and northeast. However, the wider area, the field area, is enclosed by mixed native hedgerows, which will be visible on the next slide. So as seen from this slide, the wider area is enclosed by the mixed native hedgerows and tree screening from all viewpoints around the site. The relationship between BESS and residential properties will be discussed later in this presentation. In terms of site history, apart from the environmental impact assessment screening and pre-application requests, there is no history for this site. This slide is just to highlight an overview of operational renewable energy sites, mainly solar farms, within a 4-kilometre radius. We're going to go through some of the site photographs now. So the photograph 1, it's looking from northwest, looking to southeast, which is the access lane, which is unnamed road. Photograph 2, it's showing west, looking northeast into the site of the existing access gate. Photograph 3, it's showing again the unnamed access lane, looking from northwest towards south. And number 4, it's the opposite direction, looking from south towards northwest. Photograph 5, it's showing the southwest boundary of the site, and photograph 6, looking into the site from the northwest. Photograph 9 is access from Randall's Hill, and in photograph 10, northwest towards unnamed access lane, again from south, towards south. Photograph 11, it's taken from B3067 towards South Lodge entrance, which is west of the site. Photograph 12, it's again taken from B3067, looking towards the site from the west. Photograph 13 is taken from the bridge on B3067 towards the BT exchange, which is to the left of the site of the photograph, and the site itself. Photograph 14, it's taken again from the bridge towards the A35. Photograph 15, it's taken from Dorchester Road to the north of the site, which is from the Upton settlement boundaries, looking towards the site to the north. And 16, it's from the Redgrove Road towards the site from the northwest. Photograph 17, it's taken from the A35 going eastbound and 18 from A35 going westbound. So on a photograph 17, the site is to the left. On a 18, its site is to the right of the photograph. This shows the access cable route from east towards the substation, and in opposite direction, where it's looking towards the cable route. Photograph 23, it's showing, as previously mentioned, the public right-of-way access, which has been closed. So this is towards the cable route, looking across the site, and 350 towards the closed public right-of-way. Photograph 24, again, it's a cable route, and its access filled to the adjacent 350. Photograph 25, showing again the cable route crossing 350 towards northeast, and 26 looking towards the cable route to the west. Photograph 27 is taken from the Randall Hill towards the site to the south, and photograph 27, it's taken from Hunting Road towards the site, which is further away at northwest. Just a little background to demonstrate the extent of BESS application across the UK. These maps show database from the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. The battery storage facilities at all scales identify as at national level as playing an essential role in our energy transition and ability to fully decarbonize the electricity grid by 2030 and achieve net zero by 2050. The identified need for BESS developments is highlighted in section 15 of the officer report. Dorset Council accept that energy needs to be produced from renewable sources, and the council must aim to provide this within its administrative area. Storage is needed to reduce the cost of electricity system and increase reliability by storing excess electricity in times of low demand to provide electricity when demand is higher. The proposed BESS is for 32 megawatts capacity. It would help to support local, national and international targets through the provision of renewable energy supporting infrastructure, thereby reducing carbon emissions and helping to decarbonize the grid. The location in close proximity to a national grid substation has been identified as the most appropriate location for this development, which would reduce electricity losses compared to transition of electricity over longer distances. The proposal provides storage for electricity generated that can be made available at peak usage time. This reduces the need to rely on using power stations that meet peak demand, some of which use fossil fuels and therefore have a harmful impact on the climate. This slide just demonstrates a number of standalone BESS and BESS developments that have been determined in recent years within Dorset and some adjoining authorities. So in excess of 680 megawatts of battery storage has been granted in Dorset to date. Moving on to proposed development. Excuse me. This table provides a summary of the proposed development comprising 2.2 hectare site, included cable connection to the substation, existing and proposed habitats. This table provides a summary of the proposed components with their maximum heights for the compound. There are 19 battery containers, which will be containing between 4 to 5 batteries once where the battery model has been selected. Each battery container is connected to an inverter or transformer. This shows the plan of the battery energy storage system. As previously said, there is 19 battery containers, each one connected to an inverter or transformer. Capacity, it's 32 megawatts of energy. The site also includes a switch room, substation, a shipping container for spare components, 2 access points, a location of CCTV and acoustic fencing. Internal track loops throughout the BESS compound for maintenance and access. The proposed landscape mitigation includes strategic planting and enhancement to the boundaries of the proposed development as per this slide. The proposed drainage strategy includes attenuation pond, conveyance trench, and bounded areas around battery containers, which is each fitted with a valve. Local representations. So the application was advertised by means of site notices and a press advertisement. There were no letters of objection, support, or general comments being received from the members of the public. Consultation responses. In general, consultees have raised no objection, as can be seen on this and the next slide. Moving on to officer assessment. The application is for full consent and the issues for consideration are set out in this slide. Also to note, the application was screened for environmental impact assessment and the EIA is not required. Principle of development. The Purbeck local plan does not reference planning policy in relation to battery storage. However, it sets out the following in terms of Objective 3, Paragraph 73, 74 and Policy E3. These are also set out in Officer Report, especially paragraph 16.1.2 to 16.1.9. Again, the National Planning Policy Framework sets out the following in terms of paragraphs 8C, 157 and 163, which are also set out in Officer Report paragraph 16.1.10 to 16.1.11. With regards to National Policy Statement for Energy, which sets out the national policy for nationally significant energy infrastructure and states that it may be a material consideration for any relevant application. Given the nature of this application, officers consider that it is a material consideration here. The proposed BESS proposes infrastructure to support the national grid in making more efficient use of energy, a significant proportion of which comes from renewable energy such as wind, which is erratic in its energy production. The battery facilities allows energy to be stored at times of high production and low demand, and so it can be then used at times when production is low but demand is high. It will help to use existing energy resources more efficiently. The principle of proposed development, which will help to reduce greenhouse emissions, is consistent with aims and objectives of the relevant local plan policies and provision of the NPPF. The principle of development is considered to be acceptable, subject to all other matters, material planning consideration, of which an assessment is provided within officer report, especially section 16.1, and it is summarised in planning balance exercise in section 18 of this report. Impact of the Greenbelt. Again, the application site lies within the Greenbelt and it sits outside of the settlement boundary of Upton and within the open countryside. The proposed development would result in harm to the Greenbelt because it constitutes inappropriate development as it does not meet any of the exceptions set out in NPPF paragraph 154 or 155 referred in officer report under section 16.2. The harm to the openness of the Greenbelt has been considered in both spatial and visual terms, but also the overall conflict within the purposes of the Greenbelt. Given the nature of the proposal in such that it would have a harmful and urbanizing effect on the natural environment on a temporary 40 years, however, nevertheless a long period basis, and would mean openness is reduced for a considerable period. The harm to the openness of the Greenbelt in both spatial and visual terms have been fully considered in section 16.2 of the officer report. The landscape and visual effects will be mitigated to a degree by boundary hedge and additional planting, which will screen the development from the public footpath. Conservation area and The landscape and visual effects will be mitigated to a degree by the boundary hedges and additional planting, which will be screened development from the public footpath conservation area and assist in mitigating the impact of the open character of the surrounding landscape. Impact of openness and conflict with the purposes of Greenbelt, given the temporary nature of the development, the low height design of the BESS compound, and the mature screening around the site, harm would be limited in visual terms. It is concluded that the development would cause limited landscape and visual harm, and mitigation measures through additional planting would ensure that any harm would be localized. Those aspects of development will be discussed in more details later in this presentation. However, as the proposed development constitutes inappropriate development as defined by the NPPF, the harm to the Greenbelt is given substantial weight, and the application can only be approved if very special circumstances exist that can clearly outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt. As the proposed amounts to inappropriate development, very special circumstances need to be considered. A case for very special circumstances have been put forward by the applicant, which is set out on this slide. However, paragraph 153 of the NPPF states that the very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the Greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm resulting from proposal is clearly outweighed by the considerations. Paragraph 156 of the NPPF recognises the very special circumstances may include the wide environmental benefits from increased renewable energy production. Therefore, very special circumstances can only be considered once all impacts of the proposal have been assessed, and it will be referred back to this at the end of my presentation. Design and appearance. This is the typical battery container, which has got a functional design. It's made of metal and, in this case, finished in the white color. It's set on concrete base and the maximum height will be 3.4 meters. So there are also 19 power conversion units and transformers, which are connected to each battery container. The maximum height of the highest part of the equipment would be 3.4 meters on a concrete plinth or a stone base with a maximum height of 0.5 meter. There are two similar buildings on site. One is the switch room, which total height is 3 meters and dimension 7 meters by 5, and the DNO station, which is distribution network operating substation. Again, total height, including base, is 3 meters, slightly larger at 8 meters by 6. This is the proposed elevation for the spare containers, which, including the base, it's just under 3 meters high. And there are 2 gates, as per this slide, in total height of 2.1 meters. The design of the gates for each access, it's a double vehicle gate and a pedestrian gate next to it. This is a proposed acoustic fencing and CCTV cameras mounted on a 3.6 meter high poles, and the timber fencing along the perimeter of the BESS will be treated with fire-resistant coating on both sides. The height of the acoustic fencing will be 3.5 meters. This is a proposed street scene from the southwest and northeast elevation. As you can see, the majority of the compound is shielded by acoustic fencing. Only a DNO station is visible outside the compound, although it is screened by the existing and proposed boundary planting from the outside of the site perimeters. This is a street scene from northwest and southeast boundaries, again shielded by 3.5 meters fencing, and only DNO station is outside of the site. Landscape and visual impact. As previously mentioned in this presentation, there are no public rights-of-way crossing the site. However, public footpath SE 18-3 passes around 330 meters to the east of the site. Obviously, this used to be connecting the A35 and A350. However, this connection is no longer in use. This application is supported by the Landscape and Visual Assessment, LVA, which provides an assessment of the potential effects of the proposed development on existing landscape and visual amenity of the application site and the surrounding area. The LVA is based upon a 3 kilometers radius for the consideration of potential landscape and visual effects. The next 8 slides are taken from the LVA assessment to demonstrate the landscape and visual impact of the development from various viewpoints. Viewpoint 1, it's from the access gate on unnamed lane beside Randall's Hill and Hunting Road junction looking towards north. Viewpoint 2, it's from unnamed lane beside Randall's Hill and Hunting Road junction looking east, and it's about 140 meter distance from the site. Viewpoint 3, it's from the entrance gate of South Litchard Manor campsite on Dorchester Road, which is also B3067, and a Poole Harbour Trail cycle route looking towards northeast. This is taken from the bridge of A35 on Dorchester Road, BO3067, and a Poole Harbour Trail cycle route looking north. This is taken from the edge of Harbour View Crematorium, external space looking south. This is from the path entrance point into Harbour View Crematorium, again looking south. This is about 400 meters distant from the site. Viewpoint 7, it's from a burial ground within a Harbour View crematorium, external space looking south. And viewpoint 8, it's from public right-of-way junction with Blandford Road north, A350, looking southwest towards public right-of-way, SE183, again, with no access to it any longer. Residential amenity. There are no residential properties immediately adjacent to the application site. The location of the battery storage unit is situated to the northwest of Upton. The site boundary is approximately 56 meters from the settlement boundary, although the battery cells are situated further away. But the site is also separated from the town by the A35 dual carriageway. The main part of the site is situated to the northeast of Litchett Minster, which is approximately 850 meters away from the main village. The nearest residential dwelling, One Elm Cottage, to the north-west is approximately 140 meters from the site boundary. The residential properties to the south and beyond the A35 dual carriageway, approximately 150 meters from the battery units. While it may be possible to have a limited views of the site in winter months, the outlook from neighbouring properties will be little affected. The key issues in terms of potential amenity impacts relates to noise, especially from the nearest receptor, One Elm Cottage to the north. A noise impact assessment and additional noise modelling result for battery storage facility have been submitted to assess both the proposed development individually and cumulatively when considering the proposal and the adjacent A35 carriageway. This technical note represents revised noise modelling results for the BESS development to demonstrate if, through a scheme of acoustic mitigation, a low rating level can be achieved during the night time at nearest recipient on Rowlands Hill to the north and nearest recipient on the Redrow Road to the south. The more technical details and full noise assessment is set out in the officer report under section 16.5. Following an initial objection, the Environmental Health Officer has confirmed the updated noise modelling results for BESS have demonstrated that the rating level of no more than 35 decibels at the nearest noise-sensitive receptors can be achieved. Furthermore, the design of the BESS compound includes acoustic fencing around the entire site, mitigating any potential noise impacts on the nearby residential receptors. It is considered that the low rating noise levels achieved as demonstrated above and mitigation measures proposed to be secured by the planning condition 22, the proposal would not have an adverse impact on residential amenity in accordance with policy E12 of the Purbeck Local Plan. Moving on to biodiversity. The application is supported by a biodiversity plan that has been agreed by the Council's Natural Environment team. The biodiversity plan outlines a range of measures to deliver biodiversity net gains, including grassland, mixed shrubs, including trees and hedgerow habitats, will be created, and species enhancement measures will be incorporated within the site. The application was validated on 23rd of May 2023, and therefore biodiversity net gain requirement do not apply. However, a biodiversity metric has been submitted with this application. Overall, the development proposal would result in an 820.35% net gain of habitat area biodiversity units in excess within policy requirements. The implementation and creation of habitats post-development will be outlined in a landscape ecological management plan, which is conditioned under condition 20. Biodiversity plan also sets out mitigation measures regarding bats, birds, badgers, dormouse, amphibians, reptiles, and hedgehogs, which includes precautionary working methods during construction, which is set out in Section G of the approved biodiversity plan, and also sensitive clearance of habitats. The implementation of above-mentioned measures within the approved biodiversity plan, including lighting, will be outlined in Construction Environmental Management Plan, which is conditioned under Condition 19. Again, the full assessment regarding biodiversity is set out in the Officer's Report, Section 17. Subject to full implementation of the approved biodiversity plan, the NET has no objection to the proposal, and overall is it considered that the impact on ecology and biodiversity from the proposed development will be acceptable. Natural England was also consulted and has no objection to this proposal. Highways. The site will access via the existing access and an additional access of unmade track from the Randalls Hill. Application is supported by the Construction Traffic Management Plan, which has been accepted by the Highways Authority as being appropriate and robust. The submitted Construction Traffic Management Plan states that the access track to reach the second gate to the south of the site is approximately 2.5 meters wide. This route has been used by heavy goods vehicles and the traffic farm for access in the past, and it is considered acceptable for the use in emergency of fire vehicles. The applicant has also provided a swept path analysis that showed that 2 van vehicles need to access the site at operational stage will be able to negotiate the existing track. The applicant has stated that once operational, the site will be unsupervised and only encounter low traffic levels with a maximum of 1 or 2 visits per week by car or a van for the maintenance and inspection purposes. It is therefore anticipated that there will be no long-term operational traffic impact as a result of proposed development. The proposed development will be accessed by means of adopted no-through road branching from Randalls Hill that was dissected by the construction of A35. It is anticipated that there will be a degree of vehicle movements during the construction phase of the development, which is estimated to last approximately 14 months. These are predicted to be low levels, with no more than two two-way heavy goods vehicle movements per day. The construction vehicles will be routed northeast via Randalls Hill up to A350 Blandford Road North. Additionally, as part of the Construction Traffic Management Plan, the applicant will make use of route planning and any temporary signage and traffic management measures which will be provided, and a location will be agreed at a later date with the Dorset Highways. It is considered that the proposed routing is suitable to accommodate the predicted development traffic. The Highways Authority considered that the proposal does not present a material harm to the transport network or to highway safety, and consequently has raised no objection, subject to planning conditions requiring compliance with submitted construction traffic management plan. Manoeuvring, parking and loading areas, and visibility zone schemes are to be submitted under conditions 16, 17, and 18. Health and safety. Fire risk and associated impacts of any battery storage facilities have become a principal concern in terms of health and safety. National Planning Practice Guidance recommends consultation with the local fire and service rescue and consideration of guidance for fire rescue services, which are published by the National Fire Chief Council, NFCC, and entitled Grid-Scale Battery Storage System Planning. Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Services have been consulted. The proposed site layout plan has been amended to address comments from fire services in respect of fire safety, The full details of submitted amendments are listed within the Officer Report, paragraph 16.7.9. In response to fire services comments, 2 fire hydrants are proposed within the updated site layout plan, located close to each entrance gate and connected to the nearest water mains to the site. Current guidance state that water supply should be able to provide a minimum of 1,900 litres per minute for it to last for at least 120 minutes. The proposed fire hydrants are subject to suitable testing and maintenance by the operator. Although the fire services are satisfied that the 2 fire hydrants are appropriate water supply in case of firefighting operations, it is necessary to condition a final water supply for firefighting operation scheme is tested and submitted to local planning authority for approval prior to the first use of the proposed BESS development under condition 29. The additional access ensures 2 points of access into the BESS compound are available in accordance with the National Fire Chief Council guidance and addresses the matter raised in Fire Services consultation response. The battery containers and associated inverter transformers are arranged within a spacing of 4 meters to the northwest row and alternative gaps of 4 and 6 meters to the southwest row. The proposed design uses single battery containers with an associated single transformer inverter. It is noted that the UK NFCC recommends 6 meter spacing between containers unless suitable design features can be introduced to reduce that spacing. Within the proposed development, the applicant has confirmed that generic systems are fitted with the fire detection and suppression systems, and the specific details of firewall, which are rated EI at 60 between each battery, will be applied at the final stage, design stage. This will provide 120 minutes firewall between the battery compartments from enclosure to enclosure, which allows the separation distance between enclosures to be reduced from 6 meters. To ensure that proposed battery units will include extensive mitigation measures and comply with the current fire safety legislation and guidance, those measures have been conditions within the battery safety management plan prior to commencement of development under condition 28. As per NFCC guidance, any vegetation that naturally seeds within the lifespan of BESS compound should be removed, and no planting of hedgerows or trees should be planted within 10 meters of the battery containers. As demonstrated on this slide, the amended plan shows slightly less than 10 meters distance to the proposed mitigation planting to the north and northeast corner of the site, although it should be noted that the acoustic barrier is located between the planting and the battery units. Nevertheless, the further advice was sought from fire services, who have advised that presence of the fire-redundant acoustic barrier could be considered as a mitigation as long as the timber fencing is coated with appropriate fire-resistant coating from both sides of the fence to withstand fire impingement for an extended period. Furthermore, the choice of plant species should also be considered to reduce fire propensity and improve the fire defendable space. Although the applicant has confirmed that advice from fire services regarding the acoustic fencing and proposed planting will be followed, it is necessary to impose specific conditions requiring full details for acoustic timber fencing and a final soft landscaping to ensure any possible fire risk are minimized. These are under conditions 8 and 27. In respect of distance to residential properties, the NFCC guidance notes distances between BESS units and occupied buildings' side boundaries will vary. It recommends an initial minimum distance of 25 meters prior to any mitigation and notes the reduced distances may be possible in rural settings. In this case, the closest residential properties are located between 140 and 150 metres away from the BESS compound. This indicates the site is appropriately seated in relation to residential properties, and it is considered to accord with the guidance. As previously mentioned, the site will be accessed by 2 access points of unnamed track to the southwest, which is in line with the NFCC guidance to account for opposite wind directions or conditions. The internal tracks within the BESS are 4 metres wide, forming a loop throughout the compound, and includes 3 turning places for emergency vehicles between 2 rows of the battery containers. During operation, access tracks will be kept clear of obstruction at all times. As part of the emergency response plan, fire rescue services would have the relevant codes to access the compound in the event of an emergency. Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Services have stated that they are content the site layout achieves the objectives of the NFCC guidance. More detail on technical aspects regarding fire safety is set out in Officer Report under Section 16.7, including Battery Safety Management Plan measures, Risk Management Plan, Emergency Response Plan, and Proposed Conditions. Flood risk and drainage. The site and the access route fall within a flood zone 1 and have low risk of flooding. The Dorset Explorer groundwater risk indicates that groundwater is at the shallow depth beneath the site. Notwithstanding this, during intrusive site investigation, groundwater seepage were encountered at approximately 2 metres below ground level at the trial pit to the west of the site, and the groundwater was not noted in any other trial pits. In the event of groundwater emergence, flooding would follow the local topography and flow off the site to the south without accumulating within the site. Flood risk from these sources is therefore considered to be low. The EA risk of flooding from surface water mapping shows a predicted surface water flow path that crosses the east edge of the development area from north to south, and from 1 in 100-year rainfall event and upwards. This flow path is shown to be more significant at 1 in 1,000 years rainfall event. An ordinary watercourse is mapped to flow along the western edge of the site from north to south, and another ordinary watercourse is shown to run along the southern edge of the site in a southwesterly direction. The 2 watercourses meet before flowing south through the drain under the A35. South of the A35, the ordinary watercourses flow in a southeast direction along the course of the Policeman's Lane and the Watery Lane. The majority of the surface surrounding the battery storage is proposed to be constructed from permeable materials. However, except the battery units themselves, associated transformers, units, substation, etc., will produce some additional runoff. The proposed SADs to the site include a combination of permeable paving, the trench, and attenuation basin. The proposed SADs features are designed to provide the required storage volume to retain 1 in 100 plus 50% climate change event. Local Flood Authority has no objection, subject to the planning conditions, securing a detailed surface water management scheme for the site based upon the hydrological and hydrogeological context of the development, including clarification of how surface water is to be managed during construction, details of management and maintenance scheme for both surface water and SAD systems to be submitted and approved by the local authority, and an informative for prior land drainage consent to be secured by the applicant. Pollution. The development would not generate unacceptable pollution or the detrimental emissions or associated impacts during the normal operation. There is, however, a risk of such impact in the event of a fire and thermal runaway. The applicant has responded to initial concerns raised by the Environment Agency. A revised flood risk assessment and surface water drainage strategy includes specific consideration to the potential volumes of firefighting water that could be used in the event of a fire and the contaminants of this runoff to prevent contamination of local watercourses. It has been determined that attenuation options is the most suitable for this development. The access road will be formed of crushed stone and therefore will remain permeable in nature. A trench is proposed to run along the southern section of the site, connecting to the proposed attenuation pond and drainage network beneath the access roads and vegetation. Additionally, each section of the batteries will be bounded to prevent any contaminated runoff in the event of fire. More details on technical aspects regarding possible pollution to watercourses is set out in Officer Report under section 16.6, including the proposed conditions. Other matters. The application site lies outside of any environmental designation. As previously mentioned in this report, the route of the underground cable passes adjacent to Dorset Heathland site, which surrounds the substation on all sides. However, it does not cross the protected site. Additionally, this style of development doesn't create recreational pressures on Heathland, and Natural England has no objection to the proposal. An appropriate assessment has concluded that the proposed development will not result in an adverse effect upon the integrity of Dorset Heathland. Trees. The site includes trees on the site boundaries. One Category U tree, which is T28, will be removed as part of the proposal. All other on-site trees and hedgerows are to be retained. The proposals are accepted subject to the full implementation of the details set out in the arboricultural method statement. The agreed protection barriers and ground protection should be put in place and thereafter retained and maintained as per the specification until development is completed, conditioned under Condition 7. In terms of archaeology, the Dorset Historic Environmental Records does record a few features seen on aerial photographs in the area, but these are only ditches or trackways that would not be impacted a great deal. The Dorset Council senior archaeologist has confirmed that impact on archaeological remains is not a constraint to take into account when determining this application. In terms of heritage assets, there are no designated heritage assets within the site boundary. To the southwest of the site, approximately 260 to 270 metres from the site boundary, are two listed buildings: the lodge to the south, Litchett Manor, and the entrance gate and the gate piers to the south, Litchett Manor. To the east of the site, approximately 80 metres away, within the boundary of Upton, is 144 Dorchester Road, which is also a Grade II listed building. 104 Dorchester Road is severed from the site by A35 dual carriageway bypass and is surrounded by a largely 20th century development associated with the expansion of the settlement of Upton. As such, the proposed development is not considered likely to impact the setting of this listed building. There are further Grade II listed buildings within the wider area, as demonstrated in this slide, which settings are not impacted by the proposed development. The Litchett Minster Conservation Area, marked blue dotted area on this site, is situated approximately 100 metres to the west of the site. The conservation area encompasses the land that formed part of the garden associated with the manor house. Both are well screened from the site by well-established vegetation, and there is a little to no visibility between them. As the site sits outside of the historical gardens associated with the manor, it is considered that the conservation area and the setting of the listed buildings will not be harmfully impacted. There is a high-pressure pipeline in the vicinity of the proposed site to the northeast, just outside of the Litchard substation. The only development proposed across the pipeline is an underground cable connecting the BESS to Litchard substation, as indicated on this slide. Since receiving an objection from Southern Gas Network in March 2023, officers have repeatedly tried to liaise with SGN to seek to address the objection, given it mistakenly states that the development includes a wind turbine and solar panels, and it is not clear from whether the SGN had reviewed the proposed drawings. As requested by the case officer in subsequent correspondence with the SGN, advised that installation must comply with SGN safety management plan, safe working in the vicinity of the high-pressure gas pipeline guidance, as demonstrated in this slide. Whilst the SGN's objection has not been withdrawn at the time of writing this report, they have, however, advised that the objection can be addressed by implementing suitable planning conditions. With appropriately worded method statement conditions and an informative on works within the vicinity of the pipeline, the development is considered acceptable in relation to high-pressure gas pipeline. That's condition 25 and then informatives 5 and 6. The site is situated partly within the minerals safeguarding area designed in policy SG1 of the Bournemouth, Dorset and Poole Minerals strategy. The Council's Minerals and Waste team have confirmed that as a small part of the site would be affected, it is considered that the further mineral assessment and possible prior extraction will not be required on this occasion. A suitably worded planning condition to secure appropriate decommissioning of the site would ensure that electrical storage infrastructure is removed at the end of the 40-year period or within 6 months of the termination of electricity storage and distribution by the facility, whichever is sooner. Condition 4. Moving on to planning balance. The following table sets out the planning considerations both in favour and against the development and the weight afforded to these in the planning balance. It is considered that very special circumstances do exist, namely the support that the development will provide to the energy grid by providing additional capacity to deal with the system stress and the variations in grid frequency at both a local and national level that are anticipated with ever-increasing reliance on renewable energy. The Greenbelt location is made necessary by the need for a practical and viable connection to the grid, which the Litchard substation offers. Battery energy storage systems provide a means of allowing electricity from the grid to be imported and stored at times of low demand and high generation, and then be exported back into the grid at a time of higher demand and system stress. These systems, therefore, indirectly support the generation of electricity by renewable sources, ultimately contribute to the wider environmental benefits. These tables compare the planning consideration in relation to the weight attributed to them. As demonstrated in the above tables, it is concluded that the environmental, social and public benefits that will be delivered as a result of this proposal and the grid connection location clearly outweighs the harm to the Greenbelt and all other harm as identified in officer report. Therefore, in accordance with paragraph 153 of the NPPF, very special circumstances do exist, and the proposal complies with the development plan as a whole and should be approved. As can be seen on the slide, all planning considerations are considered acceptable with some subject to condition. In conclusion, it is considered that the very special circumstances have been demonstrated to outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness or any other harm resulting from the proposal. As such, we recommend to grant planning permission subject to following conditions. Commencement, approved plans as listed. Time limits, 40 years. Decommissioning, connection to the National Grid Lichard Station. Materials, tree protection, hard and soft landscaping and planting scheme. Cabling, surface water drainage as proposed by the Environmental Agency. Pollution conditions, highways, biodiversity, landscape and ecological strategy, noise mitigation, surface water, high-pressure pipeline, contamination, acoustic fencing, emergency plan, and fire hydrants. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. And can I congratulate the officer on, despite her cold, getting through that with just 2 coughs. Now move to the area for public speaking. And so can I introduce Claire Lees and invite her for 3 minutes. I'll give you a heads up at 2 minutes, 30 seconds. So your microphone will be live when it goes red.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. It's difficult to summarise and bring alive really how important this planning application is to our farm and our business. I'm sure all of you are aware how hard farming has just been walloped in the budget. And, now more than ever, diversification is so important to farmers for the viability of our businesses. And as I look actually around this council chamber today, I see there's 2 plaques that are sort of devoted to the environment and farming. And, I'm just one of many farmers in Dorset who are about to struggle in such a difficult way. So I realise this is sort of a bit irrelevant, this planning application, but I just want you to keep farming in mind, actually, as we go into the next few very difficult years. So obviously, diversification is so important to farming at the moment. And we've been very, very lucky on our farm in that for 3 generations, we've fought hard to diversify. And my husband's grandmother did the first diversification scheme, which was a small school in the big house on the farm. And that, of course, now is Litchett Minster Secondary School, which is the 2nd largest school in Dorset. No longer a diversification scheme of ours, obviously. But, in the intervening years, over the generations, we now have 2 diversified farmyards with cafes and shops in them. We have 2 small woodland schools. We have some fishing lakes. We have a campsite. We have we have Milley College, which is that huge, big school that's now developing for children with disabilities. But the big change for us in diversification happened about 15 years ago. And I should just say that 20 years ago, we decided, 24 years ago, for the millennium, we decided to turn our farm organic because we felt it was very important for our farm and for our children and for the environment and for the planet to look after our farm in the best way possible. So about 15 years ago, we were approached to develop solar sites, and we discovered that we were in a unique situation in that we were so close to the battery storage site of Litchett Minster. And so we were thrilled to be able to embrace solar panels on our farm because, that fitted in with our ethos. And, I'm going to have to go so fast now. It fitted in with our ethos, and this again fits in with our ethos. But none of these little diversification schemes, big, work in silos. They work as a team with the farm together. And you may be thinking, well, she's just talking about how this benefits her. It doesn't, because I think our farm now actually facilitates the employment of about 150 people, often in part-time work, but we are a huge motor within our community for the employment. And so this is relevant because this won't work in a silo. This will allow us to actually invest in other things on our estate, which is of such a benefit. One final thing. I've worked for 3 years with Jonathan Thompson. If he says he's going to put a 6-foot fence up, it will be 6 foot. He's a very honest, straightforward man. I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, for that representation and your enthusiasm. That's Claire Lees, resident and farmer at Litchett. So I now invite Jonathan Thompson, agent for the applicant, to make his representation. It will be 3 minutes, Jonathan. I will give you 30 seconds heads up. Thank you.
Hello, I set up Green Nation, which has led the work on this project in 2011, and we develop battery storage sites, solar farms and rooftop solar, and we manage them during their operational life. I'm very pleased to bring this proposal before you with no opposition from the statutory consultees, no objection from local residents, and a recommendation for approval from your planning officer. As the volume of renewable energy generation increases, there's a growing need for fast response electricity storage, batteries, that can supply power when there's no wind or sun, and also help stabilise the grid to keep voltage and frequency at the right level. Storage is needed all over the country to balance each part of the grid, and particularly in southern England. This project would connect to SSE's local network and use surplus electricity from the solar farms in this area. Although it's not a particularly large battery site at just over an acre, it would store enough power to keep the lights on at night in about 9,000 homes. The lack of available capacity on the electricity network is a huge constraint for new renewable projects and will limit the amount deployed in this area for years to come. This proposed project holds a scarce grid connection offer, and this forms a key part of our very special circumstances case, which you've just heard has been agreed upon by your officers. We submitted our application in May 2023 after 2 years of preparation, and a great deal of thought went into the selection of the site. It needs to be close to the substation where we can connect, but at the same time it needs to have the minimum impact on the local area. It achieves that by being in a secluded position down a track, well away from and screened from the nearest houses, and planting will screen it further. In response to concerns raised by the Environmental Health Officer, we carried out further testing, as you've just heard, for noise, and will control noise emissions at 35 decibels, as agreed with the officers. Fires at battery storage facilities in the UK are rare, and advances in design and fire suppression systems will make them even rarer. There'll be monitoring and control systems to prevent the batteries from overheating. Even so, it's important to ensure that if an incident happened, it would be managed safely and without causing environmental harm. And again, Diana has gone through this in some detail, but our design responds to the latest versions of the guidance from the National Fire Chiefs Council. It actually exceeds their minimum gap now in the latest guidance between containers. And we consulted several times with the Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Services. We will have 2 entrance gates, as you heard, alternative routes around the site, places for vehicles to turn safely, and 2 site entrances. I think I'm going to run out of time, and Claire has queered my pitch for running over, so I'll say thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Officers, is there anything you wish to respond to those comments? No? Okay. So I now open this to members. Yeah, I understand there is somebody that wishes to speak there. Unfortunately, they're an unregistered speaker and they're not able to speak at this moment, but thank you for drawing that to my attention. So, members, we move into technical questions now. David, and then member.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Belinda Rideout, Gillingham Ward. Just had a query on the eventual colour and finish of this proposal, because I note on the chart you said the containers are going to be finished in a white colour. But I also understand your condition number 6, which says details of materials and colour and finish will be subject to condition. But can you just give me an idea of what the idea is for the finish, please?
Thank you for the question. At the moment, with the submitted information, it's suggested to be white to reflect the heat, because darker colours absorb the heat and lighter colours reflect the heat. So that's the idea behind it. However, it's not set in stone, so that's why we have put another condition on to make sure we know exactly what the colours will be.
David Taylor, Charminster St Mary.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, David Taylor, Charminster St Mary, my ward. It's basically a couple of technical questions, if you don't mind, regarding the... I've always been a bit scared of water and electricity because I think you know where I'm going with this. In fact, it's like we've got fully protections on this. So you've said some statements to how it's going to be protected, but it's still water. Is there when this goes through a thermal fire, if it did, how would we be protected? That's the first question on that one there.
Thank you. So we haven't got a precise, because the model of the battery, it's because the technology is moving so fast, so the battery has not been chosen yet. However, the way these systems work, there is a general a guidance, and what they have to supply is that has to be a suppression detectors and also to different detectors within. So once when that comes to the final design of the battery storage units, that's all going to be, it's all conditioned within the battery management plan. So all this technical data will come later on. But as far as I understand, and I am not an expert in these things, there are measures in place that have to be, as a general rule, that have to be put in place. And with regards to water, I mean, I think there is a gas suppression anyway. So the water really is a secondary, which is to do with firefighting, because it's defensive firefighting. So they need to cool down the battery units around and concentrate and get the one that it's burning to burn out. That's how the firefighter works. So the water is mainly used to cool down the units around it so it doesn't spread to the rest of them.
Thank you. That's very interesting. HPG, the high-pressure gas pipe we talked about, there was some indication about how we're going to safeguard that for not being interrupted with the cable suppliers. Can you open that up? Because that hasn't been really completed with yet on that one there. Thank you.
Right. The Southern Gas Network, we're not entirely sure that they have actually objected with the right reasons, because they are mentioning the turbines on site and solar, which none of this proposal has got. So we have been promised that the local engineer will come back to us and establish it. However, they didn't. So we've spoken to the head office, and they told us about the mitigations. And there is a legislation. I don't know where my presentation's gone. Yeah. So there is a legislation that they have to follow, which on my slide's showing that it has to be certain amount of, like I think it's 6 meters from the gas pipe. So they just have to work around it, which again, it's conditioned, and they have to work and get a license from the SGN before they can actually start doing any works.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very well done. Cheers.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Councillor Spencer Flower Furwood.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was going to introduce myself, but you've done it for me, so I'm very grateful for that. It saves me having to do it. Just a point of clarification, you put a slide up with the conditions on it. You said in your preamble about 40 years or at a period of time when the operation ceases. Can I be reassured that you had the list up, you didn't actually say that on that slide? You said 40 years, the next bullet point was decommissioning. Is the condition, I just want clarification, Chairman, that the condition specifically refers to the point the officer made in her presentation, which I thought was very good, by the way. Thank you.
So the condition 4, which is on page 61 of the officer report, it says that not later than 6 months prior to expiry or the termination of the battery units, so they have to be removed. So whatever it's sooner. So it's either 40 years and 6 months after that they have to be demolished, or if the battery storage is not longer in use, then it has to be within 6 months of termination of the proposal.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richard Crabb, Sherborne West.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. One is response time for any kind of issue which could affect the installation, such as security or a technical incident. And the other question concerns levels of highway traffic during the development, which could be quite high, and that there is adequate access during the development period. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The first question about the response times. So again, this is all at the later stage, at the condition stage. The applicant will work with the local fire services, and there is the service that they do together outside of planning. So we have conditioned that all these plans have to be in place prior to this development coming into force, and the applicant then works with the local fire services on any issues, the response times, detection times, and anything like this. This is something that they do later on, and it's obviously I haven't got those details with this planning application, but that's to come.
Thank you.
Which it specifies what they have to do and what the advice is. And with the other question, probably best is for Steve Savage to answer the highways issues.
For you, Chair, if that's okay.
Yep,
I can trust
go ahead, Steve.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. In answer to your question, Councillor Crabb, the projected traffic movements are very low for this. They're talking 2 HGVs generally per day. There is a phasing programme through, as you'd expect, for the construction period. There will be construction personnel visiting the site, of course, but I think they quote between 12 to 15 cars at any one time, but the intention is that they will be parked within the site curtilage, within the compound, so there'll be no parking on the adjacent verges. So we've assessed the potential traffic movements. We've looked at Randers Hill, the junction with the main A-class road, and we're of the opinion that they're of a nature and type and number that there won't be an adverse impact on the public highway. So hopefully that's answered your question.
Okay, thank you very much for that, both of you. One of my other concerns is that if there's a security breach, that measures are in place and there's a plan in place to respond quickly, because that could lead to other repercussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crabb. Councillor David Northam, Upwey and Broadway.
Thank you, Chair. Upwey and Broadway is in Weymouth, just as a reminder. Thank you for a very thorough officer assessment and obviously on a detailed submission. There was just one thing which I think was misspeaking. You mentioned the footpath being closed. Don't think it is closed. I think it's just blocked off. You can't go anywhere. It just reaches the A35 and you can't go across the A35. And I did wonder whether the applicant might consider, when they put in their underground cable, whether they might consider a permissive path which could link through to the lane, restoring, if you like, some connectivity of that footpath. It's not a condition, it's a perhaps consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Northam.
With regards to the closure of public right-of-way, There is a sign, and also that it's closed. So there is no way that you can cross A350 any longer. So the footpath is not closed itself, but there is no access across the A350.
Understood. So the footpath is not closed, but you can't get across the A35. It's an important distinction. People can still walk on that footpath. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Craig Monks, Beaminster.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've thrown us all off by introducing us before we speak. My question, and sorry if it's a silly one, but with regards to weighing up the harm to the green belt and associated space versus the benefit, which is obviously within the report. I know the report refers to local, regional and national benefit. Most of the emphasis for me tends to be on the grid and decarbonising the country, essentially, which I'm all for. But I'd be particularly interested on the local benefit and whether you see that as purely the renewable energy source, or if there's other benefits that perhaps weren't in the report that would come back to the local community there. I'm always quite critical of these kind of projects because I want to make sure that if we're helping the country's decarbonisation of the grid, that the local people see a direct benefit other than hopefully cheaper bills at some point. But I'd be interested to know if there's what those benefits might be. Thank you.
At the moment, the only benefits that we consider as a community benefits would be ecological benefits, so enhancement of biodiversity net gain, and sort of there is no benefits as of very special circumstances identified as community benefits, like there might be a grant of some sort to be agreed. That's outside of this. I mean, it's possible that might happen in the future between the applicant and the local community, but not within the planning system at the moment.
Thank you very much, members. If there are no more technical questions of officers, can I suggest that we move into a period of debate now, or if anyone's prepared to move a proposal, then I'm happy for that at this time as well. Councillor David Northam, Upwey and Broadway, near Weymouth.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's been a very, as I said previously, a very good officer presentation on a detailed submission. So I think I'd like to propose that this goes to the vote with the conditions that are in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. That's David Taylor wishes to second that. Councillor Crabb, was that a third? It was indeed. Does anybody have any amendments that they wish to make to that, or are we happy to proceed to a vote? Okay, so we'll test this at vote now in the usual way with a simple show of hands. Those in favour of approving this application P full 2022/02819 for approval with the stated conditions in the report. Those in favour? Thank you very much, members. Can I ask Democratic Services if we have any urgent items? Yeah, sorry, for the audio, that was a unanimous vote. Do we have any urgent items? No. Okay, that's great. Do we have any exempt business? We don't. Okay, therefore, I declare the meeting closed at 11:25. Thank you very much, everyone.